Okay, welcome to Eastern Express, which is a channel from Multipolar TV. This will be subtitled in Portuguese, but first of all, welcome Aiden Minnis. It's a pleasure to have you with me here.
I'm glad to finally be on. I know we spoke a few months ago, but unfortunately we weren't able to do it. But hey, it's better late than never, right?
Hey, yeah, exactly, and I'm I'm very happy to have you with me here because you have valuable experience and you have an interesting story to tell because you're from Ireland. That's correct.
Well, it's a bit more technical than that. My family, both sides of my family, come from Ireland. I happen to be born in the UK, but my family is Irish. My genetics is Irish. My name is Irish, and I do not consider myself British. But for the purposes of doing interviews, technically, I was born in Britain, so I claim both nationalities, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Which part of Ireland do you connect with?
My family, both sets of my family, both maternal and paternal, come from Cork in Ireland, Southern Ireland.
Southern part of the island. And you have, well, you were born then in the UK, in the territory of the UK, but you have decided to go to Russia and fight alongside the Russian army. Can you please guide me through what led you to that decision?
Well, growing up, I've always been acutely aware of the foreign policy and the geopolitics that my country likes to force on the world. And its own citizens. And of course, I was also interested in history, modern history, Soviet history, post-Soviet history. And I was of the knowledge of what the West in general was doing to Russia in the 1990s. So it stems back from having some understanding of the causes of what happened. And of course, when it did happen in 2014, I was already educated on exactly what was happening. And at that point, I was unhappy with it, but I didn't really consider doing it coming over. And then what happened, or what started to happen then, was an 8 years campaign of terror and ethnic cleansing of the ethnic Russians in the Donbass and Novorossiya regions. And it was with the connivance of my government, who was arming them, sharing intelligence and financing them. So each time I was paying my taxes or spending money in the UK, it's simply in a shop. Part of that money was going to the banderists in Kiev. And it got to a point where I was seeing so much crime committed by the Kiev junta on the population of the Donbass, which included the Odessa trade union building fire, the Kharkov bus bombings. They were routinely kidnapping ethnic Russian women, children off the streets. They were murdering people. They were tying people to crosses and burning them, like something out of the Ku Klux Klan in the Deep South in the United States in the 1960s. So it's that kind of behavior that I was seeing, and it was escalating. And the final straw was the hypocrisy of the government in the UK and the West, who turned a blind eye to all the evidence and continued to support the banderists in Kiev. And I couldn't put up with that hypocrisy. That's one of the worst character traits in the world a man can have, or especially a regime, a government can have, and then forcing it on its own people. So the lies, the Joseph Goebbels level propaganda. And I'd had enough. I'd had enough of the people being murdered. And I'd had enough of seeing the testimony of the families and friends of these people being murdered. I mean, it got to a point where Kiev, was bombing Donetsk, dropping phosphorus on the city, basically carpet bombing the Donbass, and then preparing a ground invasion before Russia intervened in 2022. So to cut a long story short, I apologize. I decided that if not me, then who? So I decided that I was going to come and fight. It was a pretty easy decision, and that's what led up to it. I can't really explain it in any other way. I just felt a pull on my heart, you know. The heartstrings were calling me to the Donbass. So that's exactly what I did.
I understand. Where did you get your information from by the time there was 2014 until 2022? In the meantime, how did you access information from what was going on in Donbass? Did you follow? Perhaps you followed persons like I did. Like I followed Russell Bentley at the time, from when he was.
Yes, I did actually. He was a big inspiration. Actually, I reached out and talked to him a few times, and watching his documentary, I think it was, I can't remember who did it, but someone followed his journey to the Donbass. And I took inspiration from that, but the decision was already made. But yeah, it's alternative media. I mean, I follow Western media, but of course it's just lies and propaganda. But then I also follow Russian media and alternative media like Russell Bentley, and many other channels too numerous to mention. So you kind of you deduce from reading both sides, and you know, you kind of come somewhere in the middle. And you kind of get the truth. And what I found is that it was the alternative media that was telling the truth in the West that wasn't. You can see with your own eyes, you know. I mean, you know, as long as you're not stupid and you know how these governments and news agencies and propaganda arms work, then it's pretty easy to figure out the truth. So, you know, that's effectively what I did. If the government tell me it's raining outside, I'm going to go outside and check, you know.
I fully understand. I mean, if I can share a lot of your views, because I also followed Russell, like I said, and I'm rather close to his to the widow.
Lord, she's a lovely person. I've had a few conversations with her also. She's an amazing person.
She's great. She's actually my grandmother of baptism, and.
So, awesome! I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's nice. And if you allow me a little bit of vanity, it's this mug that I'm holding here was the mug where Russell used to take his coffee every morning. She gifted it to me, you know, after what happened. And so yeah. I totally understand you, and I understand your motivations also. I kind of feel the same, although I didn't have the same attitude as you did, as going into the army itself and being on the front lines. How long have you been doing that?
So I eventually made the decision in 2023, late 2023. I signed the contract and started training on the 1st of December 2023, and then I deployed in early 2024 to the Donbass, the Severodonetsk, Kremnoy regions. So that's when I finally got there.
How do you handle the language differences when you were in combat operations?
Right, so it is difficult. I'm still trying to learn the language. I've got a basic understanding. I could probably understand it a little bit better than I can speak it. But when you train with your regiment and you get to know these people, you kind of work out a way anyway. I mean, first of all, when you're training, you're using a translator and trying to work things out. But as you get to know these people, you kind of work out what the other person's trying to say or what he wants you to do. So it just becomes second nature. And as I said, once you're training together, the training is regimented. You know, it's done in a particular structure. So you can kind of understand, if you understand the structure of the training, you can understand what the person's saying to you. So as long as you're not stupid, you can overcome the language barrier. At times it was difficult, but fortunately for me, whenever I went on to combat operations, I never really had a problem. I kind of knew how it was going to work, and I knew what my commanders and what my comrades wanted. And of course, there was actually a few people that spoke English. So one of my friends with the call sign artist, he spoke fluent English, so he was put with me. And I spent a lot of time with him until he unfortunately was killed in action. He was a good friend of mine. And so it was okay. And to answer your previous question, yes, so it's coming up, I suppose now, over 2 years, maybe a month's time, maybe 2.5 years I've been in the SVO.
Okay. And you are an assault trooper. Is that correct?
I was. I'll give you a quick summary. When I deployed to the Severodonetsk, Kremnoy area, I was a sapper. So that could be general engineer work 1 minute, and then you could be in the bomb squad, demining, mining areas, planting explosives, taking explosives away, a lot of it from civilian areas that the Ukrainians laid. So I started out doing that, and then I became a stormtrooper. That was mid to late 2024, and then when I was wounded by a drone. I spent a few months in hospital, and then I redeployed again in early 2025. So the stormtrooper would have been mid to late 2024, and then I redeployed after being wounded in early 2025, and that was as entrenchment on the front line and evacuation. So, that's still a very dangerous job. So that's my resume so far.
Mm-hmm. I have met some people responsible for evacuation, medics and whatnot, and actually I have met one of them that has been killed recently, unfortunately. And it's they by all the accounts they give me, it's a very, very dangerous job, and they all claim they are like priority targets, which is something I still have difficulty to understand.
They certainly are. I mean, you've got the way evacuation works is obviously you've got lines or interconnected rings of the way the regimented is dispersed through I suppose through the front. So you would have evacuation at the very front line that would evacuate the stormtroopers when injured, or anyone that's running out doing the product runs or the caravan runs to the observation posts or wherever the storm guys are deployed. So if anyone gets injured there, you have to run and get them. And it is highly dangerous because they are routinely targeted by drones. Usually the Ukrainians will know where those routes are, so they have drones laying in wait. And because sometimes it's a priority evacuation, sometimes you'll run out there and you won't have guns with you, not because we don't have them and not because we are not allowed to carry them. It's just you want as little weight as possible so you can go out and get this person and bring him back as quickly as possible. And let's be honest, if you've got drones out there, kamikaze drones with high yield thermobaric explosives on them, body armor and a gun really isn't going to stop it out in the open. So it's a calculated move, it's a dangerous move, but we have to get these guys out. And that's what we have to do. But then from the very front line to the second line behind, you'll have other guys taking over. So it's almost like a interconnected chain of evacuation guys that will take them gradually to the back to the field hospitals. And I did the evacuation on the very front line, which was it was not a nice experience. It was rewarding in some ways because you saved lives, and of course at other times it also included clearing the fields. You probably know what I mean by that, and evacuating the people that had paid the ultimate sacrifice. And in some ways it wasn't nice, but at the same time, at least we got them so they can go home and be buried a hero,
Okay. It's nice that you're giving these details, because I always try to understand the dynamics of the battlefield, because I think a lot of people here and also there in the rear of Russia don't actually understand the dynamics of the battlefields. I always try to talk with the troops, and I had the privilege to talk with troops that do reconnaissance and infiltration operations. And they told me like a great deal, and now you're telling me this. And how would you say, I mean, knowing all this danger with the drones, knowing all the difficulties this you guys with the infantry have to endure to prevail on the battlefield, where would you say this war is going in the military point of view? Is there any way out for victory, or at least a quicker victory? Because everyone is in the West, they all cheer that Russia is stalled at the front lines. What would you say about this?
No, not stalling. There are moments where the lines can remain static, but that's just a case of you'll have the commanders higher up above my pay grade planning combat missions, planning assault missions, which I'm not aware of. But so the lines for a time, a month or two, may remain static, but eventually assaults and infantry assaults will be launched, and the Ukrainians get pushed back every time. I'll give you an example. I was in the Kupiansk area doing the evacuation and the entrenchment, and I was there at the very time our regiment, along with others, were pushing into the Kupiansk city. So I could feel it, and I could see it and experience it in real time. So as far as I'm concerned, from my experience, we are making progress, slow progress, but steady progress. And the lines are continuously moving forward. And in Kupiansk, that was a great victory. I know they still dispute the city being taken, but I can tell you the city is taken. The city limits and administration borders are controlled by Russian forces. It's just in some areas in the forest belts outside of the city, there's still combat operations and fighting between Russians and Ukrainians going on. But Kupiansk proper is taken, liberated by Russian forces. So from that experience, it's pretty obvious. And it's like this. I got many friends in different regiments and in different areas, whether it be Lugansk, whether it be Kharkov, or whether it be the Donetsk regions, and they all tell me the same thing. Of course, that's not to say it's not easy and the losses are not incurred hard, but the lines are progressively moving forward. And I'll say this: we have supremacy in just about every metric that you can measure. We have more drones, we have more mortars, we have more artillery, we have more men. And I'll give you another example. When it came to doing evacuation, you're not just evacuating the wounded or the people that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. As the Ukrainian lines are being pushed back and we're liberating more areas, then of course, that there's going to be Ukrainian bodies on the battlefield. And I'll tell you this: even though we're on the assault, we're taking the initiative most of the time and moving forward. And you would think, naturally speaking, if somebody's on the assault, they would carry more casualties. Well, that isn't the case from my experience. So being on evac, we evac 10 times more Ukrainian bodies than we do our own, but actually by a considerable margin, which is quite catastrophic for them. So, I think victory is going to happen, but a time frame on it, I couldn't give you.
Yeah, I understand. I actually wanted to hear from someone who is actually in active duty. I've heard many accounts. I know it is difficult. What would you say that can you see an operation today like we saw in the early days of armored spearheads, for example? Is that still possible to do?
Again, I'll give you my opinion, although I'm not an expert or a commander or studied a military college or university. But from what I've seen, it's very hard, I think, to do massive armored arrow offensives simply because of drones. Drones are absolutely lethal. They're cheap and they destroy everything that they decide to target. So drones are a real problem on this battlefield. It's changed modern warfare. So whilst I think it's possible, but in order for it to be completely possible, you would have to saturate enemy lines of the area that you plan to do a mass armored column assault. And that would require a lot of rockets, a lot of artillery, a lot of mortars, a lot of drones yourselves, would require extensive bombing from the Air Force. So it's possible, although drones have changed the landscape. So from my understanding, and this happens to be for both, I'm speaking for both sides here, tanks seem to be used almost like a secondary gun, like they'll roll out, fire the shells in a certain direction, and then they'll roll back in hide to wherever they were. So yeah, it's almost like they're being used as some kind of artillery piece, almost.
I understand. Yeah, they're almost like taken back to their historical initial role, if you would allow me this analogy. Where they were subordinated to the infantry and not the other way around. It's very interesting, these details. What have changed since you've started fighting until now? What have changed, if anything changed, of course, in the way that the infantry acts because of the drones? I mean, do you have now active training against drones, tactics, shooting, whatever? Because I believe that must be some countermeasures being developed to fight the menace of drones.
It's very tricky. You're definitely having to reach into the brain to think of ideas to combat them, because they're just lethal. I mean, you can park them in the field. A few well-placed drones can stop whole companies from moving. They are a serious problem in general in war. I suppose the way I experienced the lines moving in the Kupiansk area, especially when I was there the first few months, the Ukrainian drones were a serious problem until we got a handle on it. And the only way really is to put a handle on it is just saturate their lines with bombs. And then you move under the cover of that. Yeah, I would say the biggest difference from when I first joined the Russian army and seeing the way it worked is drones. Drones are a serious threat and a serious problem. But the countermeasures would be you would saturate the area, because if you saturate Ukrainian positions with big bombs, using everything at your disposal, of course, the drone operators are going to have to hide for cover. The mortar guys on their side are not going to be able to work, so they're hiding, they're taking shelter, and then you move under that effectively. That's really all you can do if you're working. If you're out in an open field and you're on a mission, I mean, it's very dangerous, and if a drone happens to be parked nearby, or a drone comes overhead, a kamikaze drone, there really isn't a lot you can do. The best way, I would say, because I've been in this position where I nearly got killed by a drone several times, being out in the open, is you would probably face it rather than trying to run away. Because if you're running away, you're not really seeing where it's going. It's just going to come into you. Whereas if you're facing it, you've got a chance to shoot it, and you've got a chance to try and move out of the way. But there's nothing really in it. If you get caught out in the open with a drone, the potential circumstances of how that will end is not very good at all.
I understand. I had the opportunity to see drones at work, of course, friendly. That's why I was near them, and it's really scary. I mean, they can move in a way that even your eyes cannot keep up with sudden movements that they do, and let alone when you're in a stress position and you're trying to fight for your life. Moving a little bit out of the front lines, do you have any political ideas or political affiliations, like ideology?
Right, sure. So I've kind of, if we were to talk in general terms without mentioning organizations, I would say that I'm left-leaning, but I don't mean left-leaning as in like socialist-leaning, but I don't mean that as in modern-day leftism. That to me is just craziness. But, my motto is for the many and not the few. So if you're going to use the state apparatus to try and improve the lives of people that you're ruling over, then it should be with the understanding that each decision you make should be for the many and not the few. But it seems everywhere in the Western world those roles are reversed. So yes, I would say I'm very left-leaning. Yeah, that's without mentioning organizations. I don't know whether I should, but that should answer your question, I believe.
Yeah. I kind of understand. But just for a little bit more detail, do you have, for example, sympathy for the Soviet Union, let's say?
Yes. I was a fan of the Soviet Union. I definitely have sympathies for it. But then it's hard to almost completely pigeonhole me into a box of complete leftism or complete communism. Although that would, if you were to, that would probably be the box that you would put me in. But it's, I'm also like anti-imperialist. You know what I mean? I don't like governments like you have in the west of the UK and the United States, especially coming from an Irish family with a lot of republicanism in it. Yeah, being at war. So with the United Kingdom. So yeah, those are my leanings, I suppose. I suppose you could try and put me in the box with communism. What version is open to interpretation? But yeah,
no, it's okay. Just trying to understand more the way that you think and the way that you see the world.
Sure.
Do you think your maybe the background of your parents from Ireland might have I don't know, motivated you to be like this or to think like this? Maybe because of the history between Ireland and England. Do you think this could be it? This could be the roots of your thoughts?
I think there's a big part in that. Sure. I mean, I'm from Irish heritage, so the Irish have an ability to endure hardship, and they have rebellion and war in their blood. So it's in their DNA. So I definitely think that played a massive part, because of course, even though there are fringe movements in Ireland still against the British rule in the north, it kind of died out and finished in 1997. So I'm sure that if that was still in a phase of armed conflict with Britain, that's probably where I would have ended up rather than Russia. But there's not much in my ideology between the two places. I love them both,
What would you say now that you've been living in Russia? And a lot of people here always claim that Russia is a place where no freedom of expression and a lot of freedoms are they are not allowed by the state. I mean, and you have to be careful with what you speak and what not, and because it's a kind of dictatorship. Well, what did you say to these people that believe in this word that is said here in the media?
I mean, first, the people that are making these accusations are people that watch the Western news media or are involved in the Western media spreading propaganda, and they know themselves it's lies. I mean, the experience I've personally had since being in Russia, it's very safe. I can walk around anytime, day or night, in any area, whether they be the affluent areas or whether they be in the poor areas. I've never had an experience where I've been attacked. I've never had an experience where I've been abused. I've never had an experience where I felt threatened. So, that's just in normal civilization. So that's great. And everything is so much bigger. It's cleaner. The streets are very clean, by the way, no matter where you go. And there just seems more sort of social order in things, so I like it. Again, most of my time has been in the war zone, so I've got limited knowledge, I suppose, in terms of giving you the bigger picture. However, no, I'm able to do what I want. If I want to walk down the road with a ski mask on, I'm going to be left alone. It's as crazy as that sounds, whereas if you was in the UK and tried to cover your face, you'd be harassed by the police. I've never been harassed by the police. I've maybe been stopped once or twice, and they were like routine checks off public transport because of the terrorism threats, which is completely routine. It's no drama. You just show them your ID. All right, off you go, no problem. So I've had no issues. I like it. Don't get me wrong. There's language barriers. There is a little bit of a culture difference, but they're not monumental culture differences. They're quite easy to overcome. It's a lot more conservative here. I would say there's a lot more of a community spirit. People are more willing to help you rather than being stuck in their selfish ways. So I would say that, yes.
Yeah, I can corroborate that with my own experience. That's the feeling I have, and I actually also like to be, well, not as close as to the Ukrainian lines as you are, but rather close to the front lines when I go there and do my trips and go to some units and talk to the guys. And I think the spirits, and also what I felt, and please correct me if you have other opinion, is that people actually talk about everything. They even openly with each other criticize the government, criticize this policies or that policies, and they do it in a very relaxed way, I should say.
Yeah, no, I've not come across someone that doesn't feel like he can not give his opinion. I mean, of course, there are limits, but there's limits in every country. So if for instance, if you start going on social media calling for the overthrow of people in power, then that's going to cause you issue no matter where you are. But in terms of me having conversations with people, yeah, the conversations are frank. They will tell you what they think. That's the thing with Russian people that I've found, is they've got no problem telling you what they think, no matter what it is, no matter whether you want to hear it or not. So yeah, there's no suppression of what people can talk about. You know what I mean? Again, you have to be careful. Like, you don't want to stretch into making terroristic threats and things like that, because you're going to be arrested no matter what country you're in. But I'll give you an example. So for instance, if you look in the UK, which is supposed to be a free democratic country, there has been more people arrested in the UK for social media posts than in Russia. What does that tell you? You know?
Yeah, and also in the streets for doing peaceful protesting, just for saying a few words about this or that are forbidden, namely Palestine, mentioning Palestine and whatnot. I have seen those videos of people getting arrested. Yeah. Please go on, please. You were saying.
You can protest here, but you just have to do it in the right way. So if you just turn up sort of, I don't know, what would be perceived as a sensitive site outside the Kremlin or outside a government office, you know, especially with a war going on and terroristic going on from these psychopaths in Ukraine, then of course they might not look too politely about it. But if you go through the bureaucracy, which no one likes bureaucracy, but if you go through the bureaucracy and plan it in a sensible way with the permission of the authorities, you can more or less protest about whatever you want. But again, there are limits, you know what I mean? But that's like that in every single country. So yeah, this idea that it's like some kind of totalitarian state is just nonsense, you know? They're projecting is what they're doing in the West. They just do it in a very sort of low-key, modern-day leftist woke way, you know?
I haven't asked you anything about your enemy, the one that you're facing. Have you met any Ukrainians like POWs or something on the course of your actions?
Well, I mean, if you're going into storm operations, you probably are not going to meet any, if that makes sense. I've seen prisoners of war being taken. I've seen prisoners of war being marched past our trenches when we were on the entrenchment line. Obviously, we've evac'd them. But no, I've not personally had conversations with any of them, but I've been in and around them numerous times. But yeah, I won't speak to them. It's not really my remit. Usually they are blindfolded and handcuffed, and they are taken almost immediately to another area away from us.
Okay. Do you have any like a statement that you'd like to, or something that you'd like to talk about that I haven't asked? This would be the moment.
I suppose you see on social media, especially Ukraine and their supporters, usually people in the West, their whole propaganda machine of Russia does all these things, commit crimes and all of that, and they show videos of buildings in the cities being, you know, in ruins or on fire. Well, they never show you the minutes preceding the video where, whenever there is missiles going into direct urban areas, it's because they have military equipment there, they have air defense there, which they have routinely been caught out putting those military objects in civilian areas. They do this deliberately. So whenever there is a response and when these military pieces are destroyed, they then say, "Oh, look what Russia did. They attacked civilian areas." That's not the case. And also, I was in Kupiansk. I was able to, I suppose, socialize would be the wrong word, but we got drone teams there, and you speak to them, and they showed me videos of people as we were liberating Kupiansk, of civilians walking towards the Russian lines because they're waiting for the Russians to come. And then, they're wearing the white armbands, which is usually routine. The drones go in and drop leaflets to the civilians in the area saying that if you want to come to the Russian lines to be evacuated, you can. This is how you do it. And so I've seen videos of this. You'll have a drone up in the air, keeping an eye on them and directing them to the Russian lines safely. And then all of a sudden you see Ukrainian kamikaze drones coming and killing them. I've seen multiple of those videos of Ukrainians committing crimes. But what they do is, there was a few famous videos that come out of some old people that were killed by drones, and they tried to blame Russia on it. Well, I saw these videos before they even came out into the social media. So that's how I know they were a Russian observation drone and Ukrainian kamikazes. It was the Russians that released that footage, and Ukraine tried to steal it and suggest that it was them that killed the old people. And this is the kind of thing what they do. So my message would be is, don't be so quick to believe the Ukrainian media, because I've personally witnessed numerous war crimes, or I am aware of war crimes. For instance, snatching the children out of any remaining area of the Donbass, which the Russian forces are sort of pushing into and about to liberate, so the Ukrainians are still the children. Then they end up abroad into the clutches of some not very nice people, usually paedophile politicians. That sort of stuff goes on. And if a parent tries to resist, they're beaten or killed. The children are never seen again, with the connivance of MI6 and the British government and the Ukrainian government, including Zelensky's wife. She has a foundation. And just general things like this. I mean, for instance, there was an interview not long ago where an international journalist asked Zelensky, why is it that none of the Ukrainian politicians' sons and daughters are fighting in the Ukrainian army? To which he replied, well, people in Ukraine are free. It's up to them if they sign a contract. In which I laughed about, because there are hundreds of videos coming out every week of Ukrainian citizens being snatched off the street with violence for the meat grinder. Yeah, sure. And there are tens of thousands of videos of this at this point on Facebook. If you'd have to type it in with Russian letters, but hashtag TUC, and then you'll see tens of thousands of videos on a Facebook page with that hashtag of Ukrainians snatching people off the street against their will with violence and shoved off to the meat grinder with no training. So yeah, that would be my message, is to really go out of your way to look at these things, because it's pretty black and white to me. It just happens that Ukraine have a Nazi-style propaganda machine, which unfortunately for us is pretty effective,
Yes. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can actually speak again. I mean, I'm sure that in some time from now you'll have some updates to give us, and we have some more. As the war progresses, as the situation progresses, we'll have a lot more